absolutely wild as Vern Gagne's All-Star Wrestling goes coast to coast and continent to continent. The greatest wrestlers in the world.
He may be an apprentice carpenter, but I guarantee you he is a seasoned ring veteran.
I've been hit with bar stools, bar rags, barmaids.
I'm talking to you.
They're scared that Hulkamania's still running wild. Oh, yeah. I got a big fat wife and 9 kids at home, and I gotta feed them.
And take a look at Jesse the Body in real life.
Open your hand once if you would.
You want to see it?
This is absolutely unbelievable. Totally, completely out of control.
He's coming in over the top. Hey! Look out!
Hello, everybody. Welcome into AWA Unleashed. We are the preeminent #1 podcast dedicated to telling the stories and reliving the memories of what we consider to be the best wrestling promotion in the history of the wrestling business, the American Wrestling Association, based out of Minneapolis, St. Paul. My name is Chris Tubbs. You see that there. I am in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Slick Mick is in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Polish Joe is in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And yes, happy opening day to those who celebrate, even those of us who are Minnesota Twins fans and get paid to work and talk about said baseball team. It's still one of the best days of the year, opening day. I know the Yankees and the Giants played Wednesday night. That's not opening night. Yeah. It's like the overseas series. Those don't matter. Today, this Thursday, is Major League Baseball opening day.
You got it, buddy. You got it. And hope springs eternal for about a week.
Yeah, and obviously we're pre-taping this live podcast before everybody sees it. But I also have my fantasy baseball draft tonight.
Okay.
So it's like this is a fantastic day if you are a baseball fan. I love opening day.
Wonderful. Shohei Ohtani, no matter what.
Well, I got the 6th pick in the draft, so he will be gone by then.
Shohei Ohtani, no matter what.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's talk about sports that aren't fixed.
Yeah. Well, you can't say it because of Shohei Ohtani and his interpreter from a couple years ago gambling. Yeah. Well, we are happy to have you guys along with us. And for those that don't know, my shoot job is a radio producer and on air. And one of the things that I do is I do Minnesota Twins Final Pitch. I work with the team. So that's why I'm, obviously a little bit biased. Joe's got his stuff. Mick's got his Ultimate Warrior hat, which it's like Sesame Street. Which one of these isn't like the other? How is the Ultimate Warrior? How is he all connected?
How do you know I'm not referring to me? I mean, I might not be the Ultimate Warrior, but maybe it's Ultimate Warrior. Maybe that's where I made my mistake.
Yes, Ultimate Warrior. That's good. I like that. We are going to talk about people that you don't have to worry about when they have your back today in the bar fight backup. But first of all, we are going to get to the promotion, guys. We have to do it. So you can fast forward to about the 5-minute mark coming down in 3, 2, and 1. Okay. Pinfall membership, $4.99 a month. You get access to the podcast a day early. You get the monthly video watch along. It's basically Mystery Science Theater 3000 meets professional wrestling with video that has been produced by our very own Polish Joe Chupik. It is fantastic. It's a lot of fun. Back to Ringside with Mick and myself, where we talk about the current state of the business. You get a personalized thank you letter with an Unleashed magnet and a sticker. You may or may not be able to read it, but it is going to be handwritten. That is proof that it is real. And 5 photos from Slick Mick's Picks. All of that for $4.99 a month. So if you're a member of our Facebook page or you're subscribing here, just check it out. Check it out for 1 month. We guarantee that you're going to like it because we're doing things that nobody else is doing. Along with that, we do have our TeePublic, where you can get your Slick Mick merchandise. You can get your Unleashed merchandise. You see it right there. TeePublic.com /user/Unleashed plus 3, 2, 1 mark. There we go.
Yeah. Nailed it.
So
Well done, bud.
So, I'm not a TV guy, but I can back time when I need to.
You're a semi-pro. That's great.
Semi-pro. Well, it's just like Will Ferrell in the Flint Tropics. Okay, let's get into today's show. And Mick, I'm going to kind of let you guys kick it out. I'm going to go ahead and get the pictures ready, but kind of describe why we did today's show and then the tallying process as we go along. And I will let you go and set that up, and you guys do the talking gimmick.
All righty then. Back in the day, Joe, wrestlers were a little bit different in terms of their persona and the way they were presented than the way they are today. There were big, tough guys, and I'm not saying the guys in the business aren't tough today, but it was a different breed. Back in the old days, up to and including probably the early 90s. And again, not to denigrate who we've got out there today. You don't want to screw around with any of them. But back in the day, you had guys that you would often say, if I was in a bar fight, who would I want at my side? Well, that's what I asked the folks this week, and I got a great number of responses. And we're going to show the top 15 vote getters. There were a couple of ties that we'll also talk about, but I had like 65, 70 wrestlers that were submitted by the viewers and by the listeners. Danny Hodge was on the list. Kurt Hennig made the list. Golden Moose Cholak made the list. I mean, there was a host of guys who made it where somebody's like, hey, you know what? I want that guy on my side. But we're going to give you the top 15 to maybe 20 names. And Joe, was pretty universal, especially with the top guys.
I mean, going into this, and I discussed this before we went on air here, there's 3 that I think are going to be on everybody's list. I'm not going to, who they are, and I'll bring it up when we get to them. But there are 3 guys that are just very commonly referred to as the toughest that have ever been in the business. As I mentioned to you, Mick, it was tough to only choose 5. So outside of those 3, I had to come up with 2 others. I could have easily done 7 more.
Oh, God, yes.
And still have been comfortable with that list, or shall I say comfortable going into some backwoods bar with a bunch of rednecks who thought professional wrestling was fake, and spout something and say, really? You want to see how fake it is?
There we go. Yeah.
Take care of my light work,
It's interesting too, as I mentioned, I had 65 or so names, and every one of them I looked at, you know what, I can understand that. I can see where they would think that. One guy, I believe it was our friend Kurt Carlson, actually had Bobby Heenan on the list. Not because Bobby's a tough guy, but he said in a bar fight, somehow Bobby would either cheat or go out the back door or frustrate somebody, find some way to weasel his way out of either winning the fight or avoiding it altogether. But we had a lot of names.
But if it was Bobby in a bar, I don't necessarily disagree with the logic, but I can see Bobby running up a bar tab and then starting a fight, having whoever he has with him take care of the fight, and then Bobby could leave the bar, go into the car, and go down the road to the next bar and start a new bar tab.
Eddie Sharkey lives. I think it's kind of, with all due respect and all the love in the world. Yeah, so we're gonna do it in reverse order. And as I said, there's a couple of dead-on ties, and coincidentally, they turned out to be tag teams. It's like if people voted for one, they had to vote for the other one in their mind. So we're going to go from 15 down to 1 with a couple additions. This one, to the average wrestling fan, might be, I don't get this. But I tell you what, our buddy Brad Ringens, who incidentally is in a tie here, we'll talk about his compatriot in a second. Brad Ringens is universally recognized as one of the strongest upper body wrestlers ever. And, you know, for his size and his stature, this is a Greco-Roman wrestler in the Olympics who trained with tree trunks and logs and everything else. I can see you don't want to screw around with Brad Ringens.
Well, I think the general statement can apply to anyone on the list who is a true amateur wrestler.
Yeah.
You don't mess with a real wrestler, a guy who you get tied up with, or he's going to shoot on you, get down and take your legs out. But you're right about Brad. That upper body strength as a Greco-Roman wrestler, he made the Olympic team. Unfortunately, the U.S. boycotted when they were in Russia. The Olympic Games were in Russia. But Brad Ringens, I would have put him in my top 10. He didn't make my top 5. But the next guy who tied with Brad Ringens, actually, I did include in my top 5, and that's John Nord. Now, my reasoning for it, few different reasons. One, back in the day, John was an extremely large human being.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
I mean, put together like a brick shithouse. Number 2, John's nuts. And I say that lovingly and respectfully because I love John Nord, but John was nuts. And when we had him on the podcast, if you hadn't seen the episode, I brought up the story of when John had his leg. He was playing with the New Jersey Generals, I believe, and he had his leg in a cast, and somebody cold-cocked him, punched him. John chased him down, put his finger in the guy's mouth, and ripped from his mouth up to nearly his ear, ripped the guy's face apart. Now, if that doesn't back up what I said about John being nuts, well, I think that adds to the credibility of that statement. But because of that story, give me John Nord in a bar fight.
Joe, I think that gives new meaning to the expression grinning from ear to ear.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't quite a grin. By the way, before we go on to the next one, a guy just popped into my head here that should have been on the list, and I should have put him on my list. And he comes in because I'm thinking about all those Minnesota guys from the north side of Minneapolis or whatever, and that's Wayne Bloom. Wayne did not make our top 15, and I don't know why, but Wayne Bloom was and is one tough SOB. And, had I thought about it more, I probably would have put him on my list, but we don't want to forget Wayne Bloom.
Like I said, picking a top 5, only a top 5 in this business, that's a tough task.
It is, and especially old AWA guys. You look at the roster, look at the list who we've got, and my God, yeah, this is an old school, straight ahead, no nonsense, no bullshit group of guys. So let's go on to, that was the tie for 15. Here's a tie for number 14. We'll put them on in one picture. I was surprised that these two did not get higher up on the list in terms of total voting. The Kayfabe cousins, the Crusher and Dick the Bruiser, tied at number 14.
My only thought is, for the reason why they didn't be higher up on the list, is they'd have been too drunk to sustain a long bar fight. And not to mention, they would want to just take care of business quick and get back to the drinking. But yeah, when you bring up barroom brawling, I mean, who else do you think about than these two? So, and yet again, I only had 5 to choose from. These two could have, should have been on my top 5 list. I'm just glad they're represented in the top 15.
No question about it. And, the Crusher might have been at a little bit of a disadvantage because if you saw the original movie, The Wrestler, where there is that locker room scene, where Crusher and Bruiser are dismantling the mob. Crusher would have had to have a camera to turn to and do a take to the camera in the bar. Otherwise, he might have been at a disadvantage. If you get a chance to see the original movie, The Wrestler, you'll know what I'm talking about. But Crusher and Bruiser, again, kayfabe cousins in the world of wrestling, tied at number 14. So let's go, Chris, to the next one. Well, there you go. You don't necessarily think of Vern as a bar fighter. It was probably, beneath Vern to get into a barroom brawl or whatever. But I tell you what, legend has it, back in the day, with his amateur wrestling skills and his physical conditioning, Vern Gagne was the real deal, and you did not want to screw around with Vern Gagne.
A younger Vern Gagne, I would agree 100%. Vern carried himself well, and as I alluded to earlier, you don't mess with a real wrestler. They'll tie you up in knots and make you look like a pretzel quicker than you can drink a beer. Well, for most people. But yeah, no, Vern in his day, and even in the ring, you messed with Vern in any way, shape, or form, he would put you in your place. A shooter, if you will. And
perfect. There you go. A shooter, no doubt about it. We got another shooter or two coming up on this list as well.
Yep.
And then these are your votes, folks. These are not ours. Ours were kind of different, but similar in a lot of ways. So let's see who you have said comes in next, just ahead of Vern Gagne. I can't argue with this one. Scott Flash Norton. And again, that Minnesota connection, the Minnesota tough guys from the northern tier, the northern suburbs of the Twin Cities, or from Robbinsdale, Minnesota, wherever. Scott Flash Norton, former world arm wrestling champion. Look at Scott. I mean, and this is, well into his career when he was working, in Japan, and then of course with the NWO. Scotty Norton, it would be like throwing a ping pong ball against a Sherman tank. I think people would be flying out of that bar like it was a Keystone Cops comedy.
When Scott Norton first walked into the AWA studios and I met him, I was in awe because of his sheer mass. I mean, he wasn't, 5'6", 5'8". I mean, Scott was probably maybe 6 foot.
Yeah.
So not, a 6'8" monster, but he was so thick, not only this way, but depth-wise.
Yeah.
In my years in the business, the thickest muscular wrestler that I have ever met. And just his sheer size, Scott Norton was on my list. In fact, he was number 4 on my list. I already said John Nord was 5. Scott Norton was number 4. If for no other reason, if it's a barroom fight, I'm going to say it's just by putting in the definition of bar fight, I'm going to say that involves more than 2 people. I'm thinking multiple people, barroom brawl. Scott Norton is going to, by himself, is going to need 3-4 guys on him to just try to take him down. So just by his mere size and mass, well, he's helping the numbers on whomever I'm with in a barroom fight, barroom brawl.
And again, it's got to be in the water. That group of guys like Norton and Nord and your buddy Barry Darso, your good close personal friend. A lot of the guys from the northern suburbs in Minneapolis, St. Paul. God, they were what a crew. Scotty definitely belongs on this list.
By the way, speaking of Barry, congratulations to Demolition for being inducted into, albeit the fake WWE Hall of Fame. It's still an honor that is well deserved.
Absolutely. And, Barry and Bill Eadie both played a lot of different roles, wore a lot of different hats in the wrestling business. So again, overdue. Congratulations to them. Let's keep looking at the list and see who comes up next. Well,
I got
what
a
do you
big
know?
fat wife and 9 kids at home, and I got to feed them.
I am very surprised at Big Stan. Stan Hansen did not finish higher on the list than he did because he was one of the first guys that came into my head. Him and the other guy that obviously we'll talk about a little bit later on. But Stan Hansen, I think the mere fact that if Stan was not wearing his glasses when he was in the bar, it would have been a dangerous situation anyway for anybody. Stan Hansen was a big boy and still is. Stan was probably about legit 300 pounds, well over 6 feet tall, and could not see a foot in front of him. The Mr. Magoo of professional wrestling. Can you just imagine Stan Hansen in the bar swinging wildly at anything that moved? It would be like flippers at a pinball game. People would be flying back and forth, bouncing off of walls and tables, lights going on and off, and bells ringing and everything else. Stan Hansen, the lariat, the real deal.
If you take his in-ring persona when he would be walking to the ring with that cowbell on a bull rope, swinging it wildly and not giving a rat's ass if he was going to hit somebody, just take a look at Super Clash 1 against Rick Martel. Give me that version of a Stan Hansen in a barroom brawl. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about my chances of coming out victorious.
No question about it. Big fat wife and 9 kids. The next guy also has bar fight written all over him. And many, many times at the Flame Cafe, country western bar, downtown Minneapolis, near the Minneapolis Auditorium, himself and his tag team partner, Dusty Rhodes, who incidentally did not make the list, coincidentally, they would go in and they would clean up, literally clean up using people as mops and rags at the Flame Bar in Minneapolis. Dick Murdoch. They called him Captain Redneck for a reason. And I won't go into too much of his political philosophy or his worldview. But what you saw with Dick Murdoch is exactly who Dick Murdoch was.
Well, you had referenced Crusher and Bruiser earlier in the locker room brawl, but was it not Dick Murdoch and Dusty Rhodes in that barroom fight?
They were. It was them. They took care of Harold Cicada Oddjob. Kind of tossed him around the bar at Mazlak's Bar in northeast Minneapolis, where they filmed the bar scenes for The Wrestler. But Captain Redneck, Dick Murdoch, legendary. And again, I don't know what you can say about Dick Murdoch. He was an old school tough guy. He had his likes and his intense dislikes, and he'd let you know about it, particularly with his fists if the situation called for it.
Well, he had the nickname Dirty Dick Murdoch.
Yeah.
And that was for a reason. There was some legitimacy in there. If he was on the receiving end, the wrong receiving end of a bar fight, he would do whatever it would take to right that wrong, if you will.
There's no doubt about it. And again, coincidentally, Dusty did not make the list, which is, you usually don't separate Dick Murdoch from Dusty Rhodes. But of the two, I guess in my mind, when I think bar fight, I think more so Dick Murdoch than I do Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know of any behind the scenes stories of Dusty getting into some fisticuffs and so forth. I mean, outside of the movie The Wrestler, and I'm not saying that he didn't. Don't get me wrong.
He did.
Yeah, but Dusty, I just don't think he has the reputation that Dirty Dick Murdoch still has, or a lot of these other guys on the list. Now, having said that, I'm not going to get on Dusty's bad side.
No, No, definitely not. You've done enough damage with Darso, to last a lifetime. By the way, you're going to sit front row center at the Hall of Fame induction there and yell, "You guys are a cheap knockoff of the Road Warriors."
Yeah, like I said, I can outwalk them.
You better. Anyway, let's keep going on with the list here. Your votes, everybody. And there they are. We have another tie. And again, it's not coincidental because when fans would vote for a tag team combination like the Road Warriors, they put them together so the votes are equal. Animal and Hawk, Joe Laurinaitis and Mike Hegstrand, again, couple of Twin City guys, not from Chicago. And they tore up, they were bouncers at Grandma's Saloon in Minneapolis when they were discovered by Eddie Sharkey, and then went down to Ole Anderson in the Georgia Championship Wrestling area to get their feet wet in the business. You don't have to extol the fighting capabilities of Animal and Hawk. Again, these are two guys, when you think about them, when you think about who do I want on my side in a bar fight, boom, right here.
Well, I mean, just take a look at them. Let me start with what they were in the business. When that first note, that first of Iron Man came over the loudspeakers, the fans would pop. And then these two massively muscular, leather-clad initially, and then later with the spikes on them, you throw on their face paint, you throw on the fact that they were nuts on top of it, they intimidated the living shit out of not only their opponents that they were going to be facing in the ring, but the fans as they're walking through the crowd to get to the ring. Their presence alone, I think, could have been bottled and marketed as a laxative for people.
Wow.
So you put them in a bar. I mean, just think about this. You try to pull something at a bar, and you've got these two as the bouncers. I'm guessing that in things that probably never happened, somebody starts something in a bar, and Animal and Hawk would come up behind him and say, "Excuse me, sir, you have to leave. You're being disruptive." I can pretty much guarantee that it was, "Hey, you, whack, boom, and out the door."
I still love that laxative line. And, of the two, if there's a certain degree, Joe, of maniac level, I would have to put Hawk a notch above Animal. I think Animal had a certain degree, not necessarily of self-control, but of normalcy to him. I think Mike Hegstrand was just lovably unhinged. And neither of these guys would have been anybody to screw with in a bar, no question.
Well, and throw in the fact that they were on the juice and the roid rage element into it, which, I mean, they're not the only ones on this list, but yeah, from intimidation to size to just downright being batshit crazy. Yeah, I'll take Animal and Hawk on my side for any barroom brawl.
Absolutely. And you know what? The next guy on the list, I think I might just take him too. And that is the walking fire plug. You talk about a guy who was not the tallest in the world, but built like the proverbial brick shithouse. And that is the late Masa Saito. As unfortunately, the police department in Waukesha, Wisconsin, found out about 42 years ago. Masa, as Jesse Ventura said, trained with people hitting him with nightsticks. And Masa, a good friend and training partner of Brad Ringens, talk about a legitimate tough guy. Former judo champion in the Olympics, everything about Masa Saito was authentic.
I will describe Masa as a cross between Brad Rheingans and Scott Norton. From the Brad Rheingans perspective, Masa was a pit bull-sized human being, but he was also thick, especially when he came back to the AWA. I swear the only thing that he did when he was in prison was work out, because he was just thick. I mean, you look, he doesn't have the ripped abs, like a Rick Rude. Not many had him like Rick Rude. By the way, Rick Rude was somebody who has a reputation that could have very well been on this list, but he was never in the AWA. Yep. But Masa was, I wouldn't fuck with him. Not to mention, he had this look on his face that just screamed, "No fuck with me."
Yep, absolutely. And in size and stature, Brad Rheingans and Masa Saito very similar. That upper body, just like oh my God, like a tree trunk. And he certainly belongs on the list. He's proved himself over the years. Let's keep going according to your votes. Who is next on the list here? Christopher Tubbs. Our good buddy. And Joe, you had a firsthand, pardon the expression, experience with Wahoo McDaniel. Wahoo over the years has had a reputation, even in his waning years when he came into the AWA in the late 1980s. Still, Wahoo McDaniel had a reputation as somebody you just did not fuck around with, and well earned.
Especially in his early days. When he got a little bit older and he was booking in the AWA, I still wouldn't have messed with him. But in his earlier days, there are plenty of stories that, and I mean this with all due respect, you did not want Wahoo to go on the warpath.
There, I get it.
And I will add, even in the later days when he and Ray used to go to the bars, those are two guys that you just didn't cross the line with, because they would have put you in your place quicker than you could do a shot of vodka.
Wahoo was a nice guy outside the ring. When we dealt with him, in his position as the booker for the AWA along with Ray, soft-spoken, great sense of humor. But if you antagonized Wahoo McDaniel, you're picking a fight with the wrong guy, to say the least. You might as well light a fuse on 100 megatons of TNT. This guy was explosive, and Wahoo did not back down from a fight. And I believe probably over the years, Joe, he actually went maybe Easter egg hunting to get into a fight here and there. The Chief, tough guy.
And to clarify for the record, he was a legitimate American Indian, a Native American. I've seen some posts online and they're confusing him with other wrestlers who portrayed themselves as a Native American. No, part Choctaw, part Chickasaw Indian.
Absolutely. And what comes to mind about the guys who portrayed themselves as Indian, Native American, Sheegan on LKC early in the day as Billy White Wolf. But Wahoo McDaniel, and as Joe will testify, I think one nipple, Joe, is a little bit higher than the other one, after you foolishly, stupidly said, "Wahoo, give me a chop." What the hell were you thinking?
Well, how many people can say they were dumb enough to ask Wahoo McDaniel to give them his infamous chop and lay it in there? That would be about a 22-year-old me, young and dumb and you know the third part about it, but I think he may have he may have wrecked some internal anatomy of me by me standing there and say, "Go ahead and do it." When I think of Wahoo or see a photo, I still feel that chop, and that would have been 39 years ago.
You deserved every bit of it.
Yep.
What were you? I won't even say what were you thinking because you weren't. Let's go on to the next man on the list. You know what? This makes sense. And I thought about him. I didn't put him on my personal list, Billy Robinson. But Joe, when you talk about the shooters in the business, the guys that would tie you in knots and love to talk about it and love to gloat about it, Billy Robinson was the guy. You don't necessarily think of him as a bar fighter, but certainly if you want somebody on your side that is going to prevail and protect you no matter what, Robinson's the guy.
Yeah, the stories of Billy are of legend. He could definitely take care of himself, and unfortunately, his demise later in his career, he got sort of ganged up by several guys after being with one of the guy's wives, but that's a whole nother story. Billy Robinson inside the ring, a shooter, big time, and he would let you know it, even if the other guy didn't deserve it. Yeah. Billy wanted to make sure that his opponent knew that I'm in control of this match.
And I mentioned before the infamous night that I was at the TV studio and a fan, a couple of seats away from me in the audience, was making fun of Billy Robinson. Billy got out of the ring on live television, stopped the match, and went out and stood right in front of the fan and cracked him across the face. So yeah, Billy had a short fuse. So while you might not necessarily think of him as a bar fighter, it probably wouldn't take much to get him going.
Yep.
All right. Who's next? Who do we have?
The next guy on our list, I'm surprised that he was as low as number 5, because he is genuinely, he universally considered among the top 3 toughest guys in the business. But here on this list, you guys put him at number 5. Interesting.
It's very interesting. And first of all, I want to acknowledge our friend Corinne E.S. up in Canada, who voted for Andre 5 times. When I asked for the top 5 people you would want on your side in a bar fight, she said, Andre. I can certainly vote for Andre 5 times if I want to. I think what it is with obviously his size. You look at him across the bar, and he's 1.5 2 feet taller than everybody else, and he's imposing. And you're not going to screw around with Andre anyway. And in the ring, guys knew if you messed with Andre the Giant, if you pissed him off, got on his bad side, it was going to be a long night for you, or a short night, depending on how you look at it. I don't know if I've heard much about Andre getting into bar fights. I think Andre just kind of sat at the table and downed, 47 gallons of whatever it was that he was drinking. But there's no doubt if push came to shove, nobody's pushing, nobody's shoving Andre the Giant.
Well, you brought up who would be dumb enough to ask Wahoo to chop him. Well, who would be dumb enough to go up to Andre in a bar and start a fight with him? I mean, Andre, you hear story after story of his legendary strength inside the ring. When you can get a guy the size of Big John Studd to be shaking in his literal wrestling boots inside of the ring, so much so that he ran out of the ring during one of the matches. I mean, legend, just absolutely legendary. And maybe because many saw him as more of a gentle giant, maybe that's why he didn't make the top 3 on the list. But Andre the Giant, number 5, I would have had him as probably my number 2 or 3.
We're not going to argue with anybody who votes out there. It's all subjective.
Yep.
But what I would say about Andre the Giant, to your point, Joe, about not messing with him, two legitimate tough guys, Randy Savage and the Iron Sheik, two guys that Andre did not like very much. And they did not enjoy getting into the ring with Andre. Even a guy like the Iron Sheik, a national AAU champion, a world champion amateur wrestler, he didn't want to mess around with Andre the Giant.
No, and Andre let him know it when he could inside the ring that he did not care for Khosrow.
Are we looking at number 4 here now?
Yep,
We are. Wow. Yeah, this guy here. And again, it's interesting. I don't hear a lot of actual stories about Brody getting into it with somebody in bar fights. By the way, this is a tie, Brody and somebody else. So we'll put the other person up in just a second. But how can you not have a list of guys you would want on your side in a bar brawl and immediately not think of Bruiser Brody?
Just his look. I've shared the story on the pod before about when I gave him a ride back to his hotel room after Wrestle Rock. And it was I had a 1984 Dodge Charger, which is not what you think, the classic style of the Charger or even the remake now. It was a little 5-door hatchback, 5-speed. And I'm 6'3", 200, 205, depending on the day. And I felt like Lord Littlebrook in the car. You throw on the fact that he had the R&R reading Pennsylvania and every other railroad track on his forehead.
Yeah, God.
And just that is the proverbial only a face that a mother could love type of a thing. I loved Frank. He was nothing but nice and polite and kind to me. But yeah, in a barroom brawl, I think if push came to shove, hush, hush.
Oh, yep.
And he would have cleared the room. I'll put him in the same category as the Road Warriors and Andre, just from a sheer intimidation standpoint. I don't think many went up to him to pick a fight with Bruiser King Kong Brody.
And something we've talked about, his intelligence outside the ring. I mean, his mind for the wrestling business. Away from wrestling, soft-spoken guy, and again, very, very learned guy, former newspaper writer, certainly kind of belied the Bruiser Brody character. But when you look at some of these videos from Japan, Joe, where he goes into the crowd and they're separating like the Red Sea. Nobody wants to get in Bruiser Brody's way. And again, I haven't heard too many stories about actual bar fights. I'm sure there were several. But why in the world, in anybody's even half right mind, would you want to mess with Frank Goodish?
Well, and before we get to the next one who tied Brody, one other name that didn't make the list that probably would have made my top 10 was Jerry Blackwell, just from the toughness perspective. And I'm reminded of Jerry because he and Brody, they would lay him in there. The punches, the chair shots, they would lay it in on each other when they battled in the ring, which was very, very often. And Jerry was a legitimate strongman. He was a part of the world's strongest men competition. Again, you wouldn't think of it looking at a guy who's 400 plus pounds and maybe 5'10", but yeah, I'd have taken Blackwell on my side in a bar fight. I just think he was too nice of a Southern gentleman to have really wanted to get into him. But who tied with Brody?
Well, this is interesting. You go from the large to the compact, but I tell you what, if you're run over in an intersection by a Volkswagen bus, as opposed to a Mayflower truck, you're still going to get hurt really badly. And Mad Dog Vachon, Joe, we have talked so many times. Mad Dog, I don't know how tall he was, maybe 5'7", maybe 5'8" on a good day. Compact, probably about 220, 225. But Mad Dog Vachon, not only as a former Olympian, as a former national wrestling champion, so he had those skills, the guy was nuts. The guy was legitimately, who's going to open the door on an airplane at 35,000 feet because he wants some fresh air? That's Mad Dog Vachon. And I'm telling you, Mad Dog would have been, I think he would have been like the pit bull, and no matter the size of the dog or whatever that he was fighting, the guys in the bar, he didn't care. He didn't care. You were going to come out much the worse for wear if you screwed around with the dog.
Maurice had a Chihuahua complex with the ferocity of a Doberman, a pit bull, whatever the nastiest dog in the world is considered today. Yeah, he would have fought to the very last kibble in the bowl of food. Putting him on I didn't consider putting him on my list at all, but I can see Mad Dog. I can see him on my side in a barroom fight. Not the biggest guy, but he'd have been biting ankles, calves, knees, and everything else on the lower half of the body.
Yeah, and that's what's scary about it. I don't think he would have, picked and choose to, he would have just been, biting and hammering and whatever else. Yeah, legendary. You hear stories from guys who were in the ring with him, and they said, don't matter how big this guy was. A lot of people say nobody was tougher than Mad Dog Vachon. An argument could certainly be made. Now, we're getting down to our top three, and this was very interesting, but very appropriate if you know the legend of Larry the Axe Hennig. Larry, again, another guy, 6'3". I'm sure in his day, when he was his heaviest, he was probably 340, I would guess. But again, the stuff of legend. Larry Hennig is one of those guys that you didn't screw around with. Outside the ring, yes, mild-mannered, although he had a little bit of a temper, depending on who you were. But Larry was strong, another former amateur wrestler, state high school wrestling champion in Minnesota, tough as nails. The stories are legendary. Horst Hoffman, one of the great shooters, the European wrestler, decided to pick a fight with Larry Hennig back in the day when they were both in the AWA. And Horst, the wrestler, I think turned out to be Horst, the hairdresser, the fashion designer by the end of that one. Larry Hennig, the Axe, pretty boy, whatever you want to call him. And no shit, Larry Hennig.
Well, I've shared the story when Larry was at the AWA Christmas party. Larry is taking a piss, around this little bar set, and I lean over and tell Greg Gagne about it. Greg's words, "You gonna stop him?" Pretty much says it all right there. I mean, he's pissing on the boss's bar set in the boss's interview area at the boss's Christmas party, and the boss's son says, "Are you going to stop him?" Nope.
And you know what? In all those years that Larry badmouthed Vern publicly, and my God, he went on well into both of their retirement years. Not one time did Vern go in and say, "Larry, you're fired," or "Larry, knock it off." Vern had sense enough not to mess with Larry Hennig. Number 3 on the list, I think some people would say, well, maybe not quite that high. I don't disagree with it. I think Larry Hennig is as tough as anybody that came around the pike.
Can't argue with you. Would definitely have been in my top 10. Fortunately, I never had to experience the temperamental side of Larry the Axe Hennig. He and I got along very well, but the stories are legendary. And again, amateur wrestler, you don't mess with them.
Nope. We're down to our top 2. And I don't think this is a surprise for anybody. I mean, we've talked about this ad nauseum. What kind of surprised me was the order that they finished in the voting, and it was close. But again, no surprise here. Let's take a look at number 2, the runner-up. Oh, good God. That in the AWA, of course, he was King Tonga, working alongside guys like the Masked Superstar and Sheik Adnan Al-Kaisi and what have you. Fans know him mostly as Haku. Talk about legendary. I think this guy would be my first choice. Well, the first two would be my choices for a bar fight. You know, he was not about pulling out a guy's eye right out of the socket, biting the guy's nose off legitimately to get his point across. And, you know, you've got that Samoan blood, that Samoan dynasty heritage in there, and you hear stories told. You just don't screw around with Samoan wrestlers. And King Haku, God, this guy was an absolute nuclear bomb waiting to go off.
And not a small man. He was thick. He is thick still to this day. And you ask any wrestler from that generation, anybody that's been in a locker room with him, they would want in a barroom brawl, without question, Haku would have been first to mind, if not second to mind. The stories of his badass prowess are legendary in professional wrestling.
He was a legit wild man if you got him pissed off, you know, in a street fight. But by the same token, what a nice, soft-spoken, fun-loving guy outside the ring. You go up at some of these reunions and conventions and talk to him, and you can't believe that this is the guy that is on most people's lists, certainly the people in the business, as the toughest, most dangerous bastard that ever walked into a ring or out of a ring. But he came in at number 2. And again, Joe, this could have been a flip-flop situation. I'm surprised he was number 2, but I'm not all that surprised at who is number 1. Let's take a look. There he is. Talk about legends. Joe, I think whenever anybody says, who are the 2 guys in the business that were the toughest of all, 1 or 2 mix and match, it's Haku and this guy, Harley Race.
And you wouldn't think of it necessarily looking at Harley. It's not like he was shredded. It's not like he was extremely muscular, but he was strong as hell. And most importantly, up here, he was the baddest son of a bitch that ever walked the planet.
Yeah.
I brought up Haku's legendary status in the locker room as being one of the tough guys. Hand in hand, Haku, Harley. Haku, Harley, without question. When we had a son on our podcast, was that for our Prime members, or was that a public one that when we had his son?
That was public.
Take a listen to some of the stories of Harley. And I'll even say there's a podcast that The Undertaker is on, and I love the impersonation that he does of Harley. Well, kid, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to do this, this, and this. I'll move.
That's right.
Harley was a badass inside and outside of the ring. And if he needed to, I'm guessing that he was always packing some heat just in case and wasn't afraid to use it.
Look what he went through in his life outside of the ring. This guy was in automobile accidents, boating accidents. During a match, he went through a table and sliced his insides when he was working for the WWF back in the day. They put a mesh fence literally inside Harley's torso in Minneapolis here. He gets into a fight trying to defend a woman from a couple of attackers, gets stabbed in the back and still has enough left to knock a guy out with one punch. Harley Race was the real deal. So again, the Double H boys, Harley and Haku, no matter how you mix and match them, you got that one right, folks. No question about it. One thing I want to say, Chris, before we go, just our list, when I looked at the three of us, very similar. I mean, there were not a lot of deviations at all, nor did we deviate really from the rest of the folks in who we saw.
There was a lot of crossover. A lot of people were thinking the same things in terms of just having the key guys were the same.
Right, exactly. The only place that I would go off the beaten path a little bit, and he was not in the AWA for a long time. If we can get this gentleman's picture up, the late Dirty Dick Slater. And again, he was in the AWA for a cup of coffee. They aligned him with Kurt Hennig for a little while. When you talk about legends in the business in terms of what they could do outside the ring without a second thought, without any remorse whatsoever, and live to tell about it, Dick Slater had that reputation as one of the toughest guys that ever lived in professional wrestling. So he was on my list, but otherwise, the three of us kind of agreed with everybody else, and great response, folks. Well done. You done good, as they say, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate it.
So there we go. Yeah, and this is one of those that when you're talking about old school, again, like you say, not to say that today's wrestlers aren't tough, but there was just a different mindset back then. Like guys had to literally protect the business 24/7.
Yep.
And I think that just kind of adds to the aura of a lot of the toughness of the old school territory guys.
Gary DeRusha, AWA referee, used to tell us, he would say, Vern told the guys, you know what, if you're in a bar, you better not lose that fight. And, you look at that AWA roster that we just put up there, I don't think too many of them did. So there you go. Thanks again, everybody. Love the response.
I'm just taking at the list that we had. We're talking about barroom fights. Can you imagine what the bar tab would be after, let's just say after a 3-hour stint in a bar after the matches?
Are you talking about you at the Croatian Hall?
I've never been to the Croatian Hall. I've only heard rumors about it. I've been in bars with these other guys, some of these other guys before. But just imagine that bar tab. No appetizers. Hell, Andre alone, you're going to have to take out a home equity loan. But just,
think of the furniture. Think of the splinter.
I was going to say, who's going to pay for the damages? Were that the guys? Was that Vern?
If you had this list, there's not another 45, 60, or 100 guys who would even be dumb enough to consider getting into a brawl with this list of characters that we just listed.
Can you imagine the broken pinball tables, pool tables, bar stools, barmaids, bar racks that these guys left in their wake over the years? Great list, guys we want on our side in a bar.
Yep. Let's get to some shout outs and wrap it up. Mick, we'll start with you.
I'm going to start with, and I hope he sees this podcast. If not, I'll make him very aware of it. And that is my buddy, Jerry Lynn. Jerry not only was a great talent in the ring and is doing a great job of coaching for the All Elite Wrestling Federation. Whenever Jerry comes back to his hometown of Minneapolis, it's like old home week. This guy, outside of Kenny J, might be the nicest guy I've ever met in the wrestling business. He never forgot where he came from. He's got a legion of friends and fans, not only here in Minnesota, but all over the country. And I am damn proud to be a friend of gentleman, dynamic Jerry Lynn.
And my shout out this week goes to a new member of AWA AWA Unleashed. Learn how to talk, Joe. Kevin McCarty, a longtime friend from my hometown, has every time I see him, it always ends up being AWA talk. I get that a lot, but you know what? I love it.
Nothing wrong with Wheelhouse. And mine is going to go out to you guys might have heard. I made you guys aware when I found out last Saturday. My friend Jesse Pierce, who was a writer for NHL.com, and she did the Bar Down Beauties podcast. She was a friend of mine. She was on our radio show frequently. I talked to her just a couple of days before. I'm sure everybody has heard, not only here in the cities, but just the horrible tragedy of the house fire in White Bear Lake, which is a northern suburb, where she unfortunately perished, and her 8-year-old son, Caden, 6-year-old Hudson, and her 3-year-old daughter, Avery. And we still have what we call in the radio business liners, where we have Jesse's voice on one of our liners that's coming back. And we've got her daughter did a drop, like a little saying where it's like Lake Show Baby. And this hurts at 37. To lose my grandmother a couple of weeks ago, and now to lose my friend Jessie at 37 and her 3 just awesome kids. My thoughts go out to her husband, Mike. I can't imagine what he's going through right now. Her family, just Jessie, we're going to miss you. And you were one of the real ones. Like, she was awesome. And yeah, that's unfortunately my shout out, Jesse. We're not going to forget about you, and rest in peace to you and your babies. So there we go. And we'll be back next week with another Unleashed.